Today, we're going to take a quick look behind the scenes of my latest animation project called Light is Just Fine Now, created with Cinema 4D and Redshift.
Was machst du da schon wieder?
Ich filme sie nochmal. Liegt das gerade gut?
Technically, this scene contains everything that makes a render engine and an artist sweat. Soft diffuse light with corresponding shadows, multiple rough reflections and refractions, caustic, subsurface scattering, depth of field, procedural textures and whatnot. Animated trees with highly detailed geometry and a high number of scattered objects for dust fibers and dirt resulted in a scene size of about 10 million polygons. Light is Just Fine Now deals with the fascination and fleetingness of everyday light situations. All 3D models in the scene are created by myself. This also applies to textures and shaders, be it worn wood veneer for the table, the fuzzy fabric covering of the sofa, or procedural marble look on the laminate or the windowsill. However, as the name of the animation Light is Just Fine Now suggests, the most important part is of course the light. Let's take a look at how I created this photorealistic lighting setup. The finished scene is pitch black at first. Only very diffuse specular reflections of the self-luminous background image exist and create faintly saturated beige accents in the room. In a second step, a redshift sky is activated. This creates further reflections of a bluish tone in the room. The first real light emission is then created by two area lights in approximate extension of the windows. One for the visible window in front and one for the window on the right, outside the camera area. The sunlight is created by using a Redshift infinite light with a very slight yellow tint. In reality, atmospheric haze dims and scatters the sunlight. Therefore, I added a second sunlight with a slightly bluer hue and shadow softness set to 20. The reflected light of the sun is represented by a yellowish area light coming from the direction of the wall. It is the same with the bounce of the daylight on the right side. And where daylight bounces back and forth from colored walls, the color of these walls also gets distributed. For this effect, a large area light in the color of the walls is placed on the left wall. For indirect sunlight through the white chair back, a disc-shaped area light sits above this chair, and for diffuse brightening of the room, a large area light in the color of the wall sits above and behind the camera. For glass candle and drinking glass, two separate light sources from the sun direction sit in the scene, which create caustics with small physical extension and a huge amount of photons. The complex-looking caustics effect on the wall, on the other hand, is just a spotlight with a self-painted alpha texture. Finally, there are two cheap tricks. First, to brighten up the shadows on the wall, I simply dialed in a minimal self-luminosity or emission for the wall material. And second, some tone mapping by the Redshift camera. Last but not least, the photographed tree in the background is replaced by an animated tree with correspondingly moving shadows projected on the wall. Now you might ask yourself, wait a minute, where's the global illumination? Sorry folks, this time no GI here. For my free works I always use manually set light, because it's fun and an excellent lighting exercise. Together with appropriate compositing, this turns the slightly flat look into an absolutely photorealistic impression. The realism is underlined by a camera animation that simulates the behavior of a handheld camera. The camera animation is based on simple keyframe animation, which is then spiced up with procedural movements by Cinema 4D's Motion Cam. The animation was created and rendered using an HP Z840 workstation with 128GB of RAM and an MSI 3090 Supreme X GPU with 24GB of VRAM. Let's have a look at the render times. From wide shot to ultra close-up, render times per frame in 1080p varied between 8 and 60 minutes. These differences come from the different proportion of demanding calculations in the image. In the wide shot, for example, soft diffuse light and multiple rough reflections are already apparent as computationally intensive aspects, but the closer the camera approaches, the greater the proportion of these and other highly complex effects get. As I am a Cinema 4D master trainer, the full Cinema 4D project of the animation just shown is included in my training Shading, Lighting and Rendering with Redshift for Cinema 4D. So go get your very own one-on-one online masterclass for yourself or for your company via the link in the video description below.